Today on the show, our focus, as I said, is on jungle justice and, of course, the violation of human rights to life. Did you know that at least no fewer than 555 cases that has been attributed to mob violence in the last few decades? Did you also know there has been an upsurge of cases related to blasphemy and, of course, being fueled by alleged incitement from clerics? What has been the reason behind all of this? Some say that there has been a large case of lack of confidence, especially on the part of the people, on our judicial system. People do no longer have that confidence in our judicial system, especially when certain persons have been apprehended by the people for maybe one crime or the other, maybe as criminals or kidnappers or bandits, and somehow they are being, handed over to the police for further prosecution and somehow find their way back again into the society to carry out their criminal activities. But what is your view as regards this? To have this conversation with me this morning, I am being joined by my guest in the person of Mr. Matthew Oluko. He is a social affairs analyst who will be providing various perspectives to this and, of course, the causes and the effect to this particular issue that we are being faced with currently today. Now, good morning once again, Mr. Matthew Oluko, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, the issue of jungle justice and human rights violation has become somewhat a part of our life in the last few decades, given the background story that I just painted. No fewer than 555 victims have been associated with mob violence. How did this particular dangerous act become somewhat like a culture to us, where in just a few seconds an individual is pronounced as a suspect or a criminal, jungle justice is seen to be carried out right there on the spot without due process? How did we arrive at this?
Once again, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I think we need a total rehauling of our system, whether when it comes to our justice system, when it comes to our criminal justice system, when it comes to the way the public view the police, when it comes to the way the judgment is being delivered in the court of law. I think we need a total rehauling. Because one, I think if you look at it holistically, the public may have lost confidence in the ability of police to dispense justice. Because ordinarily, I don't see any reason anyone would want to take law into his hands. Because we all know that the police have the mandate to investigate and prosecute. And by the time you start seeing people who already have that knowledge taking laws into their hands, it means they have lost confidence in the ability of the police to do their job. So in that regard, I think the government have a lot to do to rekindle the confidence of the public in police. Because if I look at it, you are setting in for a recipe. What if you bring in jungle justice? It is a recipe for crisis, and it is a situation that it is an even wind that blow one no good. So the best thing to do at this point is that the government, thank God, to have the national orientation, they have the responsibility to educate the public, and at various levels of governance, we have system of educating the public, and apart from that, we have like the religious institutions, the traditional institutions. Of course, the traditional institutions have more authority over the people. I think the government should, as a matter of urgency and necessity, start the process of educating the people, enlightening the people to build confidence in government institutions.
All right. Now let's look at some of the issues, because we're going to be taking it from the area of the causes before we talk about the effect. You talked about certain institutions. We're talking about the traditional rulers, the security agencies, the executive arm of government, and all of that. Before long, we used to know where certain situations, happen, especially in a community. The traditional ruler, perhaps the high chief or the Oba, his attention is brought to the issue, and then he comes in to be able to resolve the issue at that particular level before it escalates. But how has it gotten to a point where even when such a thing happens now, before the traditional ruler who tends to be closest to the people hears of it, jungle justice has happened? If you also put that side by side with, indices that shows how Nigeria can become or slip into a situation of a failed state where the disregard for the rule of law has been experienced, what do you think can be done at that level? Understanding the fact that life in itself is sacrosanct and nobody, under no circumstance, should take the life of an individual. When the disregard, the blatant disregard of the human life, the sanctity of the human life is no longer considered, what do you think needs to be done at that very juncture?
To start from where you started, I think the reason the people lost confidence in the traditional institutions or their leaders is not far-fetched, because so many leaders at that level have been accused of being culpable or being collaborating with those who are presumed to be perpetrating this crime. A particular case in hand is the issue where you see communities going to burn down the houses or palaces of traditional rulers, particularly when it comes to the issue of a Fulani militia. We have seen cases where people will go and burn down the palace of their king, perhaps because they are suspecting maybe the king is collaborating or is not doing enough to stem the tide. And I've seen the viral video of perhaps a suspected Fulani herdsman who claimed that if they needed to stay in the forest, in the bush, in a particular jurisdiction, maybe up to 3 months, that they do pay the king in that area. Though that cannot be verified, but it's a statement that is made by someone. So I think that largely accounts for the reason we seldom see, or rather we are seeing people not obeying or abiding by the directive of the traditional rulers. Then again, looking at perhaps a case in hand that happened recently, unfortunately, talking about the Edo issue that happened recently, I think it's still linked to what we are saying, because the public over time have experienced some level of insecurity, and the unfortunate issue that happened, they could not even have the confidence to even hand over suspect to the police. Because however I look at it, police is a constituted authority of government that responsibility to investigate and prosecute. So it is irrespective of your grievance or your position. Once a suspect is arrested, the first thing to do is to locate the nearest police station, hand them over. The best you can do as a society, as a people, is to follow up the case and ensure that it's not swept under the carpet. But to take laws into one's hand is condemnable by our standard. Though as a person, I think so far I commend the effort of the governor, talking about the governor of Edo State, because I've seen a governor who, at the instance of that incident, rushed down from Abuja to the scene, and I've quite seen his follow-up, meeting with the deputy senate president, who of course we understand is from Kano State. And as if that is not enough, we saw him in Kano State yesterday or so, meeting with the governor of Kano State and promising that compensation will be adequately made and that the suspects will be moved to Abuja for further investigation and possible prosecution. We all understand that even IG on its own have constituted a team to crack down on those who actually perpetrated it. But holistically speaking, I think the government, as a matter of urgency, need to, one, address the issue of insecurity. That cannot be emphasized. Then secondly, they need to build confidence in the public that once you have any issue, any suspect, the next, or rather the first point of call is the nearest police station. And that is the right thing to do. That is a civilized way of handling issues like this.
Okay, now we have seen, like you stated, the action taken by the governor of Edo State, Monday Okpehulu, who paid a courtesy visit, and of course to pay condolence to the governor whose citizens were lost in that dastard act. And of course, he had made promises for compensation and all of that. That's like a medicine after death, if you would say, because this situation needs to be resolved. And in finding a lasting solution to this issue called jungle justice, what do you think needs to be done first from the level of the community, especially looking at it from those who are in the custodians of the people, the traditional rulers, to the security agents, and of course to the executive arm of government, the governor of that state? What do you think needs to be done to strengthen these institutions, so much so that the people would have confidence that when a case of this nature comes up, you don't take laws into your hand to say, okay, this person is suspected to be a criminal, therefore jungle justice should be meted on the person? What do you think needs to be done in a very specific manner so that people who are watching us right now will understand that life of every individual is sacrosanct?
What needs to be done is in practical terms. It's not rhetoric. And it's something, I think confidence is what someone built over time. Because going forward, the people or the government agencies themselves, like the police, when a suspect is handed to them or handed over to them, the people have to see that there is transparency, and at the end of the day, that the issue is not swept under the carpet and there is prosecution. Once they start seeing that, definitely it's going to rekindle their confidence. That one. Then secondly, the government, as a matter of urgency, need to address insecurity.
In what practical ways
in
can
the
security
sense
be
that
addressed?
the kidnapping for ransom, or maybe kidnapping for raping, whatever guys, should be addressed. Because I keep saying it, the government, as a matter of necessity, need to possess monopoly or coercive power. That is what makes the government ultimate. Because you must exert your sovereignty within every territorial integrity of the country. The other time, I think I cited the issue of a Philip Wanton, an American citizen, who was kidnapped in Niger sometime 2-3 years ago, taken to Sokoto in Nigeria here. American Navy SEALs came here, they rescued him alive. And that is because they had the capacity to do it. They have the expertise. So I think we should grow to that level. And before you do that, you must leverage on technology. So for me, the government must address issue of insecurity. Because until you do that, the people will not have the confidence that they are safe. And once you have the issue of people not having confidence of maybe sleeping with their eyes open, they will continue to see how they can provide security for themselves. Ordinarily, we shouldn't have the issue of vigilante or anything of such if there were no lapse in security. Then again, let me take you to the angle of what came from the former president the other time, talking about Goodluck Jonathan, who drew from Indian proverb, according to him, that if a man pretends to be sleeping, that it is difficult to wake such person. And that when a man genuinely sleeps, you can easily wake up that person. He was referring to Nigerian judiciary. So the point I'm trying to make is simple, and it's no other point rather than what a Jonathan made that day, that the judiciary should going forward start doing the right thing. Because if justice is served and is seen to be served in cases, that will build people's confidence in Nigerian judicial system, in our criminal justice system. So what we are saying is the government need to stand their feet and start enforcing it on those who appropriate this, who manage these authorities of government. That you, who is seated in an office, you must do the right thing. And if everybody does the right thing, at the end of the day, we achieve results.
All right.
Possibly results for that matter.
Okay. So you've spoken extensively when it comes to building trust on the part of the people towards our institutions, from the traditional rulers to the security agencies and down to the executive arm of government. Now, what do you think needs to be done, especially when it comes to protection rather of certain persons, like for instance the hunters? Because obviously by right a hunter goes with a gun, Now, in the case where an individual is apprehended, just like the case that we're just talking about now that happened in Iromi in Edo State, these persons were presumed to be hunters because they were going in a truck conveying them. What sort of protection needs to be given to them so that people do not take laws into their hand and presume that these are criminals who are going about with ammunitions?
The first thing is, legally speaking, if you are licensed to hunt in a community, in a state, I don't think the law permits you to move the arm to another state. However, if someone is apprehended with arm, whether the person possess the arm legally or illegally, it is wrong to take law into your hands. The right thing to do is to hand the person over to police for investigation and prosecution. So if the police needed to prosecute for illegal possession of arm, if it is illegal, it is within the purview of police to know what to do. But on the part of the community, what the best they could do is, if you hand over suspect to police, you follow up to ensure that justice is served, justice is done, that is not swept under the carpet. There's no any circumstance that would justify someone taking law into his hands. It is condemnable, it is wrong, it's barbaric.
So is there any sort of advocacy that the state actors can put up, especially with regards to what has just happened, so that certain persons who are already in the practice or in the business of hunting can be protected? Is there any sort of umbrella body that could be formed across states, not just in Edo State, so that, you know, future occurrence will be prevented, especially considering the fact that these ones could be allowed to do their business within that jurisdiction without crossing, you know, into other states? Is there any sort of protection, like being in an association of some sort, or what exactly can be done? Because not everyone might have the wherewithal to be able to go about licensing their arms as hunters. So what do you think the government could do at that very minimum level to protect them?
To start with, if you must bear arm, you must be licensed. That is the truth. You don't just bear arm and feel. You must be regulated, you must be licensed. That
Okay, is there any sort of regulations?
But currently I understand that there are hunters associations, but I don't think whether they have a national association that encompasses all the hunters in the federation. But if they want to do that, I think we should be looking at some level of legislation to do it. But currently, you cannot bear arm, and it's not even advisable. World over, I think it's the best practice. You cannot bear arm without being licensed. I'm aware that even sometime about 2, 3, 4 years ago, the government were trying to mop up arms from the society as a way of making sure that it is only those who are authorized to bear arms, like the police, the military, the navy and all that, are the one bearing arm. But if for any reason anybody must bear arm, the person must be licensed.
Now, what do you think could be done to those who believe that taking laws into their hands is, you know, their birthright, as it were, especially looking at it from capital punishment?
I think that is where the law should apply, because however I look at it, we already have a robust constitution that deals with this particular situation. And if you are taking the case to court, I think there should be a level of transparency. At the end of the day, whatever pronouncement comes out of the court, it should be implemented.
Now, talking about the consequence to all of this, how does it, you know, portray Nigeria as a country, considering the fact that the world is watching and the onion is on the government, especially both at the federal, state and local government level, to stem the tide when it comes to jungle justice?
What would define Nigeria is not the act that just happened. What will ultimately define Nigeria is how the authorities handle it, how the court dispense the case, how the judgment that will come out of court is implemented. That is what will ultimately define Nigeria, not definitely the action that was taken by some persons that have been considered barbaric.
Now, let's look at the case of Edo State. Partly, the governor has decided to take a very bold action to meet with the governor of Kano State, and of course made also a visit to Abuja. Some persons are reacting that this shouldn't be a governor of theirs that should be seen doing this. looking at it from past experiences, especially from cases where, that should be viewed as related to blasphemy, that certain persons lost their life and no official statement came out of such. Some persons are saying that the governor, I'm talking about Monday Okpebholo, shouldn't have done that. What's your take on that?
I think what the governor is doing is in the right direction, because if you have a situation of this nature in hand, the best option is to de-escalate the situation, to douse tension. And I think that's what he's doing, and it's commendable.
All right, now let's look at the issue of human right violation. Because in the real sense of it, should anyone who is caught, especially when it comes to suspected criminal activities, not be given a day for his or her own fair hearing?
And that is where the people who carried out the dastardly act is being condemned, is condemnable. Like I said earlier on, there's no justification for taking laws into one's hands. The right thing to do is to identify the police, which is the appropriate authority that have the power, or rather the right, yes, the power under the Constitution to investigate and prosecute. Having handed such person over to the police, I think the police will revert to the department, or State Department of Public Prosecution, who will give the necessary advice whether a prima facie case has been established against a particular individual or not, to determine whether they should charge the case to court or not.
Now we'll be looking at instilling confidence on the part of the public, especially looking at it from our security agencies. Time and again, we've seen cases where persons have been apprehended and, of course, handed over to the police for further prosecution, but these persons somehow find their way back into the society to carry out their various atrocities, and nothing is done to them thereafter. Now, my question to you would be, what do you think the security agencies can do right about now to be able to correct this negative image the public has on them?
I think the police at various levels have their image makers. At the level of the national, from the office of the IG, they have the image maker. At the level of the Commissioner of Police, state level, they have. Even at the level of area commanders, they have their respective image makers. So they should swing into action to start educating the public about the implication of, one, taking law into his hands, about the implication of jungle justice, just like we have seen, because definitely the law will take its course. So by the time they start bringing those to the consciousness of Nigerians, to the public, I think it will stir the tide of people taking laws into their hands. Then, secondly, the government on their own must, as a matter of necessity and urgency, address the issue of insecurity, so that the people will not have cause to even do that in the first place.
Is it just giving press statements?
No, it's not just press statement. What I'm saying in essence is the police on their own, meeting with the public, building that confidence, and even making the public to understand that in the event of any of their personnel, officers, doing what is wrong, that they are ready to make that person to pay for it. We have seen series of that, things of that in Lagos State, where a police officer will commit an offense that is deemed unprofessional. We see the police authority coming out to say, yes, this officer have done this, we are sanctioning him. And when public starts seeing that more of it, it will build confidence.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew Otuko, for coming on the show. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
That's our offering for you this morning on the ITV network right here in Lagos.